like you all felt maybe taking a little bit of it might be better than having to do a big jump in a couple of years. So what we've currently done with this budget that's before you tonight is we added $21,174 to the property tax levy for debt payments. It's approximately half of the amount that was not previously recovered. So again, that will just become fund balance, roll over to future years for future use. We had talked about the dumpster line items being removed from the budget and putting that money back into the garbage and recycling contract because that's now all going to be covered under the contract pricing. So that change was made. And then we also made some adjustments to the water, sewer, and heat line items in the Public Works Department. They were adjusted down and that money was moved over to the garbage and recycling contract. The contingency line was increased from $3,068 to $45,867. That extra money is that levy amount for the debt payments. The rescue transfer of $65,000 was on the expenditures, but it was not listed on the revenue side in the 400 fund. So I have corrected that. It is now shown there. And then after talking with Matt a little bit more about the capital sidewalk work, the redevelopment block across from Denny's Super Value, the developer is going to be paying for the sidewalk around that block, not the city any longer. So we took the $125,000 we had budgeted and we dropped it back to $60,000. Let's see. And then in the wastewater treatment fund, I had a use of fund balance on the revenue side and an ending fund balance on the expenditure side, so we kind of adjusted amounts so that we weren't putting it on both sides because it unnecessarily inflated your revenues. And then the final piece of this year's budget is the property tax levy. With that extra $21,000 in there, I'm estimating approximately an 8-cent increase to the mill rate, so on a $100,000 home, about $8. I don't know what that number is actually going to be because we do not have the manufacturing assessment rolls from the state yet. We have their equalized value, which is how the state calculates things, but we calculate the bills on assessed value. That number probably won't come in till mid-November, early to mid-November. So I did a pretty conservative estimate. I didn't go too conservative, but based on the trends of where our regular assessment is versus equalized value for last year, I just projected that forward, and that's how I got the 8-cent adjustment. I wanted to talk a little bit about the county's portion of the tax levy, because I know they've been pretty heavily advertising that their mill rate is dropping. Again, their mill rate is calculated on equalized value, so while the number is dropping, the dollar amount that the city will see on their tax bills is going up slightly. And that is just how the tax levy is split up between all the different jurisdictions and what their equalized value is. So our current estimate for the county is about a 10-cent per thousand increase. And then finally, the school district and the NWTC levies, they are not known at this time. NWTC, I believe, gives their levy to us on October 31st. That is their deadline. They usually wait almost to the last day. The school district has their public hearing on their budget next Monday at 5 o'clock, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's 5 o'clock. And that's when they'll set their levy. So, are there any questions?
Would it make more sense to maybe accelerate what we're doing with sidewalks elsewhere, and leave that amount where it was at the $100,000 and accelerate replacements? I'm just asking, whether.
The problem with it, Jake, that the reason we lowered it back down is because we need to be able to perform that work.
Okay.
And the 60,000 is we're on target to finish at this year to do about that.
Okay.
More than that, we'd have to contractually do some.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, Wayne.
So what you're telling me is that this increase in the mill rate is due to taking that 21,174 for debt payment?
A portion of it, yes.
What's the other portion?
Let me go back and look at my mill rate
When we
and see
met
if I
last
take.
time, didn't we say we had a no increase in our?
It might be all of it. Let me just double check that for you. Mill rate worksheet. Minus 21,174. It is all of it. So if we don't take that 21,000, my estimate is that you will be about even.
So then my second question is, there's no place in this entire budget that I can't make some cuts to make up for that 21,000 without increasing the mill rate?
Well, there's always places to make
Yeah.
cuts.
Well, I guess that's my
But it's-
point. I mean, when we get into the budget further and we start talking about it, I do have some questions on some of the areas, and I'm thinking, why can't I make some of these cuts along the line so that I don't have to increase that mill rate?
Well, you can, the budgets for supplies and items like that, for the vast majority, I'm not saying every single line, but most of them are holding the same. So even though cost of paper and cost of supplies are going up, the department heads have all looked and said, okay, we can hold the line on those. Your utilities increased, wages are increasing. There's a little bit of increase to benefits. So at this point, I mean, you could cut supplies. After that, you're looking at cutting personnel.
Well, not necessarily. We're proposing a 5% increase for wages, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How much? 5?
5 is what's in the
What's built
budget.
in here today, it
It's
is
built in
5.
5. So what kind of savings do I have if I go to a 4?
$7,000 about.
Okay, so it's about 7,000 there, correct?
Mhm.
According to
Yep,
Casey.
yep, just over
So
7,000.
that's over 7,000 we come up with. And then I notice on here, the police budget goes up by over $100,000 from last year.
That is due in large part to returning the police department to its prior funding. It was cut dramatically last year, or for this year.
But it also includes a 6th officer, which you
It
know
did
my
last year
feelings
as
about
well.
the 6th officer.
Yes, it does.
So if I remove that out of the budget once and for all, I gain almost $100,000, correct?
Mhm.
You're gonna need
But-
overtime and
but-
extra part-time.
Well, you're gonna move
cover
it to overtime and part-time,
So-
not
It's
all
not
of
going
it,
away.
Put it in that
but
prior-
75,000 you'd have to move into part-time or overtime.
So if I move 75, I got another 25,000 there that I saved, correct?
Yeah.
And if I add that to that other 7,000,
I guess I just wanna back up though, Wayne, moving that over is not a matter of, we can do that, right? But, so everybody knows, we will possibly be dependent on not even being able to fill some shifts.
right?
Because there, even at the county level, there is a possibility of not being able to fill shifts. Even if we would contract through the county at $97 or $94 an hour, they could deny having somebody come up here to fill that shift.
I thought we're 65.
No, because when you guys come up here, our contractual rate, that's maybe what, with your squad, if you come with your squad car and everything, I wanna say it's 94 something an hour.
I thought we were billing us at 65.
Nine-
It depends upon.
Sergeant was 65, regular officer was like 60. That changed.
I wanna say it's 94, Kevin. Don't quote me exactly on it, but it depends who comes. If it's a lieutenant or a sergeant or a patrol officer. But the ability of, that we come down to is, we could call and the sheriff could say, I don't have anybody available for you.
Well, see, now I'm gonna disagree with that because we pay towards the county.
Yep,
Luxembourg, who is 600 people less in population than the city of Algoma,
yep.
has a part-time chief and 1 full-time officer.
Mm-hmm.
The county covers, it also covers the village of Casco.
That is correct.
So I can't believe that if we need coverage, because right now when there's a backup, the county comes, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Nobody asks any questions.
And I guess let me, we could do that and say, we don't have a shift cover right now. Then we would be the county will cover us.
Right.
Right? They will not dedicate possibly they would not dedicate an officer here to the city.
And I
But if there was a
understand
call,
that.
they would respond here. It's a matter of what kind of call it is. They would prioritize it with what else is going on in the county.
Because they would have to.
Correct. Yes, at the end of the day, they would cover it.
Right.
If it's for a barking dog, you might not see them for a while.
Well-
If it's for something that needs to be addressed, yes, they will be here.
Some of those calls could be held over, barking dogs, stuff like that, that's not criminal complaints. Could be
Mhm.
held if you have an officer on.
Mm-hmm. And then when we
If
have,
you're walking on my property, well, that could wait till the next day when you have.
Yep. it could wait, yes. But at the end of the day, then, when we do have an officer on, then you're gonna start that officer on catching up with all of those calls before anything else too. So,
I just think there's areas that we can tighten our belt. This is my own opinion. I don't know what the rest of you people, if you went through this budget, or if you looked at it, or if you're just happy with, because I don't even know where the school's coming in yet.
that's correct.
According to what Amber's saying, the county is, even though they're bragging that you don't have an increase, we're still getting it because of the way that they calculate our tax. So my point is, have we tightened our belt as much as we can? That's the question I've got.
I would ask though to the council, this is the public hearing.
Right.
We can close the public hearing, and I do have it on the finance and personnel to open the budget back up for any questions. I think that would answer a lot of questions that Wayne has, or anybody else in the council,
fine.
where we can, if we adopt it in the public hearing as is, we can't raise it anymore, we can still lower it. And we still fall behind the state statutes of the public hearing as
Ma'am,
is.
any changes that are not accepted in public hearing have to be republished. So if we want to make changes, we need to make it in the public hearing, and then you don't have to republish. The publication's about $300 and some.
We can go down.
The changes have to be made during the public hearing.
No, that's not.
That's how we've always done it. Yeah.
Otherwise, my understanding, you adopt the budget, you can't go up from that point, up to the public hearing, which you can always go down.
So if we're gonna change the tax levy, that needs to be
Right.
discussed during the public hearing.
Well, that's what I'm discussing
Yes.
that now.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
That's my point. I don't know what the other 7 people around this table, or 6 right now, because he's not here. I don't know what their feeling is on wages. I don't know what their feeling is on the 6th officer. I'm just expressing my concerns, because I look at the tax levy, and I look at what happened last year after the reassessment, and I realize these increases aren't that large, but when you start adding them up, and not knowing where the school comes in, all of a sudden it is probably a big hit for the community. And, you know, we're trying to grow. We're kind of stagnant right now because we don't have good residential property that's available. But I'm just looking at this, when I went through this entire budget, I'm just saying, okay, can we cut here, can we cut there? It all adds up. I don't care what you say. It's $1,000 here, $5,000 there. And that's my concern, Mayor, is about the levy. But like I said, I started with the wages, 4% instead of 5%. I think 4% is a good increase, especially when I look at the entire benefit package. I mean, that's key also.
Aren't we concerned about, I mean, I understand your consideration about the school and TC and county, but like those things shouldn't factor in on how we approach what the needs of the city are. And so if $8 on a $100,000 valuation is the amount that we have to pay extra, and it allows us to continue service as we need to and continue forward as we have been, it doesn't seem that unreasonable. Understanding, let's say, you know, along the way there's $50 of total per 100,000 valuation. I'm just throwing that out there as just a random number. That's the county's issue, and that's the school's issue. All right, that's not our issue. We're not here to try to maneuver ourselves around for the convenience of adjusting the taxation of other entities. You know, to your point, if there are things that are being inordinately spent or unnecessarily, so that makes sense. but the focus should be on what our needs are, and if it costs $8 per $100,000, then so be it. If we can find a way to not do it, then perhaps all the better. It's value versus cost that we have to look at. But I mean, while germane to some degree for our conversations, I think that only looking at what we are doing and how we affect the ratepayers is the essential way to look at it.
Well, I don't think some of these cuts are affecting the services that we're offering.
Good example.
How would the wages, if I go from 5 to 4, how's that going to affect the services that I'm providing the taxpayer in the city of Elmore?
Who renders the services?
Well, the employees do, but
Sure.
you're giving them a 4% increase. So what are you saying? If I cut it by 1%, they're not gonna work as hard?
I'm saying that it's $7,000 worth it. I mean, if the consensus is 4%, be it. But like you ask, who does the services, are they gonna be affected? You don't think that those factors have an impact on morale, possibly? And I'm only speaking generally. What is 1%? I don't know. We're quibbling over $8 per $100,000, right? Maybe it's, I have a $100,000 home, no big deal. You have, someone has a $500,000 home, that's $40. But I mean, $500,000 home, what's $40 in a year on somebody who has a $500,000 home?
So you don't think as an elected official, you have a duty to look out for the taxpayer?
I think that I don't have a responsibility to make sure that taxes go down or stay the same. I have an obligation to make sure the quality of service, the value of the dollars spent are utilized well, right? It's not cost, right? I don't have an obligation to lower taxes. I have an obligation to try to work to have a city that is a place that people want to come and live, and that people are happy with what is available. So it's not about saving money per se, it's about spending money appropriately. So no, I don't think I have an obligation to the taxpayer to make sure that they have less of a tax levy. But it doesn't mean to say that I'm not looking out for the money that they are putting in to make the city go. You understand that distinction, right?
Well, I understand what you're trying to say, but I don't think that a 1% difference in wages is gonna affect the quality of work.
Maybe not, but I mean, it's $7,000 too. How much is
What
going to affect
happens
your
with,
budget?
what about the communities that say we're only gonna give 2?
I'm not an elected official in the communities that say they're only going to serve 2.
But we're entitled to our opinion, so.
Well,
that's fine.
absolutely. That's what we're doing here.
Any other comments?
The only commentary that I would make is that, going back to Wayne's initial statement, I do recall after our last meeting, as far as it coming under or slightly under, and that we were going to be flat. So I have nothing to say about the wages. It was all discussed, the officer, that was all discussed, that's fine, but having that 21,000 or the full 42,000, I was led to believe that bringing that up would be flat. So
No, we were flat prior to adding it.
I thought it was going to be a slight savings or decrease.
It's negative 0.01, but that could be rounding. I'm not willing to hang my hat on negative 1 cent. Again, we don't have the manufacturing numbers, so these are just estimates. We won't know what that number will be for sure till sometime in November, most likely.
But if we vote today to have a 0 increase, then you can figure out anyway how to make that increase work. Right, correct?
What was that
If the 8
again?
of us all say we don't want to increase taxes,
Then
we
I
want that as
would,
zero
my
increase.
suggestion would be take the $21,000 off from debt payments because we don't need it. We just added it to contingency.
My question is, what's the rate of it on the bond that you're gonna be paying that $21,000? Well, you're paying debt somewhere, right?
The bonds that we have in existence are I believe, all under 4%.
Okay, then why are we, at this point, why are we gonna pay off debt early? at
You're
that-
not.
At that rate?
We're not. The $21,000, there's like 40-some thousand dollars in debt payments that we're using savings interest earnings to pay those debt payments instead of adding them to the tax levy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, yeah, I remember now.
I'm not gonna get into any of these line items, or what are we doing right now, I guess that's my question. Because I got just a couple questions when I went through this, on a couple line items, I don't understand them. Or
Go ahead.
you're gonna close your public hearing, then you're gonna have the council discuss the budget before we vote on it?
You can ask them now. I mean, if go ahead,
Well,
Mike.
there's two, if you go on your fire department, okay? Where she has in the unemployment, the FICA, what's the retirement and the health insurance?
Those are for your full-time employees that
Employees.
also serve on the fire department. Their stipends from the fire department have to have
So you
retirement
take
with
part
them.
of theirs and you put it over to the fire department's budget?
Yes.
And what percent, how do you calculate that percentage out?
The software automatically calculates it in the background based on the amount that's being coded to that cost center.
So our employees that work for the city and also on the fire department, their same contribution for state that the city pays has to get paid into, but it comes out of the fire department budget.
So there's three, or is there 3 or 4? Are you considered part of that now?
Yep,
Yes.
So there's 4.
Yeah.
and actually, we have a fifth one, Clayton Paro.
Oh, yes, because he's always been enrolled, even though he's still
So-
on the state retirement,
Yeah.
so his comes out of there as well.
Once you qualify for retirement, until you have a break in service of 1 year or more, you will always qualify for retirement.
Yes.
So even though he's
Works in Door
works
County.
in Door County, but because
We
he's
still
on the
have to
fire
pay
department, we
retirement.
still pay
Mhm.
retirement
Yep,
and health insurance?
yep. Now, if he were to quit the fire department for a year or more and then come back, he would not get retirement.
Because he was a full-time employee with the city, that's how it works.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just have a question about in the CDC expenditure side. There's something like 37,000, well, 37,325 revenue versus expenditure that's not accounted for. Where does that show up? Or
Are you
is
in the
that-
line item part?
Yeah,
Casey?
yeah.
He's looking at the revenues for CDC versus the expenditures for
Expenditures,
CDC. That extra goes towards administration costs.
Okay.
So administrator, clerk, treasurer for administering the program,
Portion
making sure people
stays.
pay.
Sure.
Yeah, with administration.
So it just goes into the general fund budget.
Is there a way, at some point, is there a way to see how it's broken down, how it's calculated? We
Sure.
can talk about it.
Yeah.
as-
Yeah, I don't think we have it broken down any further than it's just
Yeah.
for administration.
Does this,
Future, okay. Thank
does,
you.
does this budget include $5,000 for the Kiwanee development thing?
That
That
is
is in there.
actually budgeted in the 2023 and in 2024. It's through the CDC. So yes, it is in there. Now, if you so choose to remove that,
Or not expended.
or not expend it, it would stay in the CDC to expend elsewhere.
Because we don't
Through-
approve this budget on line items.
Correct.
Remember that.
Have you, as part of this, have you sat down with the department heads? Are we looking out at all of the, the outlay for the next couple of years too? Is that, because we haven't seen anything about that yet either, right?
That's coming.
Coming down the line.
Okay, so you're talking about the capital in the 450 fund?
Yes.
The capital improvement project plan has not been done for the next 5 years yet. So what is in the 2024 budget is basically what was in the current existing 5-year capital plan. The only exception to that is, you'll see at the very top of the 450 capital fund, there's 650,000. That was originally earmarked for a fire truck. Yeah, it was just the fire
Fire
truck.
truck, yep.
So we moved that to adding to fund balance because we know we aren't gonna buy a fire truck in the current station we have.
in 2024.
Another note for that is you aren't gonna get a fire truck for $650. That's what we had originally planned. There was a lot of back and forth on government finance officers' chats, community forums, that right now fire trucks are going between $900 to $1 million. So.
Any other questions? So if we approve this, you're saying we can't go lower. If we close this meeting right now, then
You-
we can't go lower?
You can go lower, but it's not gonna change your budgets.
But what I'm saying is, we have to spend another $300 to have another
Y-
public.
Yeah, if you're gonna change the levy, if you're gonna lower the levy or any, then yes, I would advise you to republish. You probably could do.
That's the levy she's talking.
Oh, yeah. So then, that was where the discussion.
If you make the change now, you wouldn't have to republish.
So do you have to publish again once you get the school figures?
No,
Who publishes it then?
that's their publication.
So their publication at that point would include the cities too, correct?
No,
Just the
you,
school?
each
just theirs.
jurisdiction does their own. You don't have any control over their budget, they don't have any control over yours.
Well, I understand that, but, so everybody is just basically publishing their separate,
Yep.
what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you have to be publishing the Trustee increase on the building?
Because the publication we put in the paper told the public, this is what we're doing. So during the public hearing that everyone's been invited to, that's, if you discuss and make those changes during that public hearing, they've already been notified of it, you don't have to republish. If you make changes after the public hearing, then the advisement is to republish.
Now, just for clarification, if you take that $21,174 today and we remove it, we don't have to republish.
Correct.
If we do it before we adopt.
Right now during the
Well,
public hearing.
that's-
How's anybody gonna know that they're not going up $8 per 100,000?
They've been notified of the public
Public
hearing.
hearing to be here.
Well, and how many people know about
That,
it?
this is what the statutes say, that's,
The process that we have to follow is the second page here, where we have to post with the paper that's the city council, the paper the city council adopted. It's in the Press Gazette, and that's been published.
Any other questions?
So in other words, if you adopt this budget the way it is, and the council says we're not gonna pay 5, we can pay 4, we can adjust that. If it's not adjusting your mill rate.
It would just be return funding to the
Back
general fund.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. If we adopt the budget as it is, as long as the mill rate isn't gonna, this $21,000 isn't gonna change, you can cut every line item you want when we get to the budget conversation in the second meeting. It's just gonna be that much more in the general fund. That's, won't be expended.
So what we're looking at, is it worth it to put that additional money in for the debt payment for next year? Or not?
That is correct.
What's our current savings return?
right now we are averaging, interest earnings. CDs.
Yeah.
The vast majority of our CDs are currently over 5%.
Then I move that we drop that 21%.
No.
That 21 grand.
I just want to, and we can decide it either way. If we go up 8 cents, the mill rate moves up 8 cents, right? And next year in 2024's budget, when we're talking about 2025, our debt payments go up, and we need to move over 40 or 50,000. Now that number's going to double next year,
Or you make some cuts in places.
or you cut somewhere else in the budget.
Right.
But now you're not looking at cutting 20,000. You're looking at cutting 40 or 50,000. Do we want to go up a little? Or, and we don't have to. I'm just saying, is it easier to go up 8 cents or 16 cents or to what Wayne said, look at where do you cut?
Any other comments or questions? Amber, do you have anything else you want to share? No?
Nope. I guess the only thing I really am looking for at this point is guidance on your levy. Do you want to leave that 21,000 in there, or do you want to take it back out?
Move.
Got a motion from
Jake,
Jake,
did you
was that a
make that
motion?
official motion, or?
Jake. I'm at the point where you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's nuts.
It
I mean-
seems half damn then.
We can't keep, there's only so much you can get out of the folks that live in Algoma. There really is. And I say this every year, and everybody seems to belly up, but anybody that's in a retirement age, you know, they're getting a 3, but we're paying employees 4. The mill rate goes up $40, but on the average Social Security, that $40 can potentially be a 12% hit on a low-end Social Security policy. Grocery costs are sky high. We don't have any control over 3 taxing agencies that are their rates appear to be random and all over the board and without any real feedback to the city, and we're the ones that have to take the shit, pardon my French, when it shows up on the tax statements. Nobody calls the school board, nobody calls NWTC, nobody calls the county, they call the city. And the young lady sitting right there is the one that has to take all of those calls. You know, we might be $8 on a $50 or a $60 or a $100 a year increase on taxes on a $100,000 house. And we go through this every year. Nobody's willing to give up anything. No, I don't know. I at this point, no, it wasn't a motion. It's my frustration. People don't seem to be receptive. You know, grapes, we can drop $600,000 here on this piece of equipment, or $600,000 there on this piece of equipment, or we got to have a water increase of 8% because we haven't, or 3% every year wasn't enough, so now we got to jump at 8. Now we're back to 3% every year. It's driving me crazy a little bit.
I do want to point out that your department heads did hold the line for the most part on their supplies. That's saying a lot because supplies have gone up. Perfect example is 1 case of paper used to cost the city about $30. It is now costing the city about $40 for 1 single case. These supplies, for the most part, are being held. So while it's not a cut, it kind of is, because the cost of everything is going up. So they are saying we will make do with the exact same amount and do our best to make it work. So your department heads are trying. They really are.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but the cost of paper is incidental.
That's just an example.
I sold copy paper for 40 years. I can prove to you that this sheet of paper, a single sheet of paper, has no cost, regardless of what it costs to case. You're in 0.00000 range of what that sheet of paper costs.
She's just using that as an example to show that
No,
the
I-
cost of something went up 30%.
No,
And
I understand.
so
but
one piece may cost nothing, but that case costs 40, and it used to cost 30. So it's a general thing. We shouldn't get bogged down by the specific example, more of the notion. And you speak to all these external things, I live in this world too. I'm not in a fixed retirement, but it's not like nobody isn't struggling. But we have a minimal amount that we can raise our levy. And it's relative, and all those things considered, I have the same struggles that anybody else does. It's relatively minuscule. We have to worry about how we function forward, and the concern a year forward, if we need to extend that debt payment, where are we cutting that 80? If we're holding the line now against raised prices, and imagine that that's going to continue, what's going to happen after that? We start cutting, right? And that's an option.
Why are we, out of 4 tax bodies, always the ones that have to hold the line? Why isn't the school district holding the line? Why isn't NWTC holding the line? Why isn't the
Because we don't
county
get to
holding
vote
the
on their
line?
budgets.
Yeah, that's what really makes me cranky, is that we do this every year, and we're the ones that are trying to be responsible, and there are 3 taxing agencies that don't care about Algoma, Wisconsin.
So this 21,000 is not necessarily debt payments, it's just 21,000 are gonna cut out of the budget. Why do we have to keep saying it's the debt payments? It's 21 grand I gotta cut out of that budget. Whether it's the 6th officer or whatever, it's 21 grand, it's not debt payments. We can't use the analogy, well then next year it's gonna be double. No, we just gotta take 21 grand out of here. Whatever we cut out. So if we make it a 0 increase, we can fight about this later. I need to see a schedule on the police department, whether we need 5 or 6 officers. I've been asking for that for 5 years. I still haven't been proved that. I wanna know if we can use overtime from the county or part-time. I wanna see this on paper.
Wait a minute, I want to rescind what you just said. You've never seen a schedule from the police department in 5 years?
Well, we've seen it when
I would
Randy was
ask,
here.
no, I would ask Kevin that you have never seen a schedule from the police department
I have
in
never seen
5
a
years.
schedule that worked with 5 officers on the schedule that I don't need to hire a 6th. I saw a schedule when we were supposed to work in the school. We're not doing the school right now, the county's doing the school. I wanna see a schedule with just 5 officers working patrol. Do we need 5 officers? I don't know. I mean, do we need 6? I don't know.
But you've asked the same question dozens of times.
But we've
You've asked the
never
same
really
thing.
been
The whole,
through
like
it.
4.5 with the equal schedule, if everybody
Yes.
does this and this and this. But you've been told we've been told, we can probably check the video multiple times, that it's been said, in a perfect world where a vacuum exists, where there's no overtime, or there's no vacation, there's no sick time, there's no this, that, and the other thing, then in fact that will work.
But how does the other municipalities do it that are in the school and they have 5 officers? How does Kiwanee do it when they have an officer
I
in
don't
the
know,
school?
how many
half the
shifts are you
time?
working in Kewanee?
They're down to only 3 officers
Mhm.
right now.
And Robin Miller's averaging how many hours every week?
Well, so is our chief. I'm just saying.
And then you're
We're
paying
cutting
time and a half.
21,000 out of the budget is all
Then
we're
we should,
cutting.
then we should go back to ask the county the question we asked them 6 months ago. Do you want to take over the city's police department? Their answer was
Their
0,
answer was
no
no.
conversation about it.
But we still have to come up with money to pay all this.
Then let's not have a police department. That was an option I
never
gave
said
too,
that
let's
either.
cut shifts.
We could cut shifts. We didn't talk about that either. That's up to PP to figure that out. We keep saying debt payments. This isn't just about debt payments. It's 21 grand to get a 0 increase, right? That's the amount,
To
21,000.
balance the budget.
To balance the budget. It's not, if we don't do it, it's gonna be debt payments. It's 21 grand.
We're referring to debt payments because that's the portion of the levy you can use.
That's the portion you wanna cut out to get that, we'd have to
No.
cut out. That's your line item, you're saying.
You were already taking your full 100% base levy amount that you're allowed. The only room you have on the levy is for debt payments. So the only way you can increase the levy is to utilize that money for debt payments. Right now, before we added that 21,000 back in, we were utilizing savings interest earnings to make those debt payments.
Well, I understand. But you're making it sound like it's gonna be our debt payments that's gonna be affected if we don't.
No. As I said earlier, if you want to cut that 21,000 out, all we did was moved the savings and interest earnings into contingency. So your budget was balanced when we brought it to you at the workshop. There was discussion about whether we should take a little bit of an increase this year or none at all. And so Matt said, let's do half of the amount and see what you guys say. We can remove that 21,000 and still have a balanced budget.
I'm absolutely amazed that we could get a budget that is so close to zero, $21,000 off, with all the increases that I have to pay as an individual. Every time I go to the grocery store, they're killing me. Every time you go to the gas pump, they're killing us.
Yep.
You know, and to sit here and say, we did this, we got our budget pretty close to perfect. That amazes me that we were able to do that you people were able to do that. That is amazing. I would like to see it stay level. I don't know how we can with all the increases. I really don't want to take it off of our employees. I really don't want to short our police department and our police protection, because that, to me, that is a high priority. Just like the fire department, those are high priorities that I'm willing to pay for. Some of the other things maybe I'm not so willing to pay for, and that's, you know, that's where we're gonna cut. But again, our employees, whether it be 4% or 5%, it's not a question of whether they're gonna do a good job, because they do a good job. It's a question of, do they stick around? Are we hiring new people all the time and having to pay more to get them? Because the job market out there is very, very tight. I think we've been lucky as a city to maintain our people and do well, and I don't want to short them because they got the same problems I got. They got to get increases too, or they can't feed their families. But I think it's amazing that we've gotten this far. So I'm just going to say, let's just take out the 21,000, make it even. Worry about next year when next year comes. You know, we might get an increase in shared revenue or something like that that'll put us over the top. We won't have to do it next year either. We don't know that. I only know for this year that let's just not worry about the 21,000. Let's have no tax increase. And well, I'm going to feel that you guys have done an absolutely fabulous job to get us there to that point. And then we can argue the mute points about, do we do this or do we do that? But, you know, Kevin, if I take the number of hours in a month and divide it between the officers at 40 hours apiece, it works. But as soon as somebody's on vacation, as soon as somebody's got a holiday, you got hours that are left unfilled. Now we can either hire a sixth guy and get good police protection here, or we can fill in from the county. But it sounds to me like we're pretty close to one, and I do think that sometimes when you're paying time and a half and overtime, it costs you more money than if you just hired the extra guy. That's the cheaper way to go, because sometimes you run yourself up trying to pinch pennies instead of spending them in the right area. So I guess that's what I gotta say.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
So the question comes, do we want to raise,
What?
do we want to raise our rate, or do we want to keep it the same? That's
Yeah.
the question.
At this point, we're not voting on anything.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have to make a decision if you want to
Okay.
remove that 21,174 and adopt the budget, or adopt it the way it's
We're not
presented.
adopting the budget tonight, just the levy.
Correct, the levy. I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, somebody would like to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt a zero increase in our levy.
That we would remove the 21,147.
Yes.
174.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Would you do a roll call on that?
I need just a minute to capture this. All right, so John Ortlieb would like to adopt the 0% increase to the levy, removing the 21,174 in debt payments. Is that the right
Mhm.
number?
In debt payment levy.
In debt payment levy. Anything else that needs to be included with that?
I would say estimated 0% because we don't know for sure.
Exactly what, yes. If he's okay with that motion being like that.
So you'd like to adopt an estimated 0% increase in the levy, removing the $21,174 in the debt payment levy.
That's
And that motion was seconded by Wayne Schmidt.
Can you agree with that, Wayne?
All right. All right, roll call. Ortlieb,
Yes.
Kevin Schmidt,
Yes.
Swedberg,
Yes.
Poor,
No.
Mehring,
Yes.
Wayne Schmidt,
Yes.
Meverden.
Yes.
The yeses have it, 6-1.
So then is there any old business to come before this group?
There is not at this time, Madam Mayor.
No new business for this group?
Not at this time.
Our next meeting is...
One moment, could we close the public hearing?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry, yes.
Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
We don't need a motion, we just need
You
to
don't
close
need
the
a
public
motion,
hearing at
just
4:50
close.
PM.
Okay, so the public hearing is closed. Okay. And there's no new business or old business we're gonna discuss at this group. So then, our next meeting is going to be Monday, November 6th at 6 PM in City Hall here. Okay, is there anything else to come before this meeting? If not, could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.